Hi there, this is Erica Merrill. I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video, and I'm very happy to have attorney Joseph Nivin with us again this week. We're here on a Wednesday, which is a little different. We'll be here on Friday too, because I was out of town last week. And we are going to be talking about how suspicions in a family court case can really mess things up. And I wanted to welcome you here today, Attorney Nivin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we're going to get right into this today. We're going to talk about, why people are suspicious, how people feel under certain situations within a family court case. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is really how is it that people take it when they are served with child support papers?
Sure. So the theme that I wanted to convey in this Facebook Live is that people have a tendency in family court to believe that the other person has bad motives even when they don't. Do people sometimes have bad motives? Of course they do. But more often than not, their motives are actually a lot more pure than people think. But when people think that the other person has bad motives, then they make the experience a lot more unpleasant than it needs to be. So when people are served with child support papers, the way they usually take it is that they're being sued by their ex. Sometimes they take it to mean that their ex thinks that they have never provided for their children. They think that their ex is punishing them for something. That's usually not the case.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I mean, you hope that people have good intentions, and obviously when children are, they are very expensive, like you said, and there are just thousands and thousands of dollars in expenses every month. So everyone needs to pitch in, and unfortunately you have to go through a court process to do that so that everything is split up fairly. Is that pretty much the gist?
Well, people that have never been married are certainly able to decide for themselves how their kids will be provided for. There's no requirement that people that were never married go to court for child support. When people want to get divorced, however, then the court does have to fix some kind of a child support order. So when people want to end a marriage, they're usually not at liberty to do the things that people that were never married have the liberty to do.
Oh, so there's kind of a different scale there when you're talking about whether someone is married or not married.
Right. I mean, if they're people that want to separate and stay married, then they're certainly able to decide for themselves how the kids will be supported. But if people want to end the marriage, then the court does have to issue an order of child support. People can agree to it, and for the most part, the courts will sign off on an agreement between the parents, but it's not without a court order like it is for people that were never married or people that just decide to separate and stay married.
Well, if they don't agree on it, then the court will...
The court will have to fix it, yes.
I see. And how do they usually figure that out?
Well, there is a formula. It's what's called the Child Support Standards Act. So in New York, there's what's called basic child support, which is what's supposed to provide for things like food and shelter. And for one child, it's 17% of the non-custodial parent's income. For 2 kids, 25%. For 3 kids, 29%. 4 kids, 31%. And then for 5 kids, 35% and above. Then on top of the basic, there are what are called the add-ons. So those are unreimbursed medical expenses, child care, and educational expenses. Educational expenses usually mean private school expenses. And the way that those add-ons are fixed are they're what's called prorated, which means that if the non-custodial parent, for example, makes 60% of the combined parental income, then they'll usually order the non-custodial parent to pay 60% of those expenses. Now I'll take a step back, and when it comes to the basic, there is a cap, which is $148,000 a year. So it is just a straight formula, 17% if the combined parental income is less than $148,000 per year. But if the combined parental income is above $148,000 a year, then that's based upon the needs of the children.
I see. So, how do people typically take it when when your spouse files for child support? What are they typically looking for when they're doing that? And we just
Typically, right, typically what they're looking for is what you'd expect. They're looking for their kids to be supported. When people separate, then it creates a lot of fear because, of course, people always are concerned that when suddenly there are two households, that they may not be able to support their kids if the kids are living with them. So usually when people go to family court to file for child support, what they are looking for is to make sure that their kids are supported, even though the other parent has decided to leave the relationship, or they've decided to leave the relationship.
Now, how is it that people take it when they are filed against for visitation rights? I should say against when they just file for visitation.
Yeah. So usually when I find that when people are served with a petition for visitation, the way they take it is, oh, he's taking me to court or she's taking me to court. And very often when people get served, it leads to a lot of anger and a lot of resentment.
I see. And so when people file for visitation, what are they looking for?
To be able to see their kids.
That's it. Simple.
Yep.
And I mean, you hear a little bit, and I don't know if it's like this in New York, but if one parent has the kids more than the other, then the other parent has to pay more in child support. I mean, do you hear a lot of commotion about that amongst your clients?
Yes. One person said it best, another attorney, and I'll say it now. He said that the worst case scenario is that people that pay child support feel like they're being pickpocketed. The best case scenario is that they treat it as if they have to pay their taxes. And nobody likes doing it, but you have to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a bill that has to be paid every year at that point. And I've heard of people having parties when their kids turn 18.
It's hard for what?
I've heard people have parties when their kids turn 18 sometimes.
Oh, and in New York, it's 21. So the parties have to wait.
21?
Yes.
That's a long time.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, they agree to pay until 22 if the child is still enrolled full-time as a student.
I see. So they're really thinking of it as when the kids are students, they're not going to be able to go out and get a job right away and support themselves. Right. So they need that help.
Well, if somebody can show that the child is, or I shouldn't say the child, I should say the young man or the young woman is self-supporting, then they can ask to terminate their child support. Child support also gets terminated if the young person is in the military.
Okay, because then Uncle Sam is taking care of them.
Yes.
So when people ask you, then what's the solution in my case? I mean, what are some of the options that people have?
Sure. Well, of course, there are some cases where the motives really are bad, and I can usually read those pretty quickly. So in those situations, what I'm about to say goes out the window. But in most situations, I would say just try to put yourself into the shoes of the other person. It's a very difficult thing to do when you're being taken to court, or when you're going to court for that matter, to try to get something. Usually people are very scared about having to go to court, especially when you're not the one that filed the case. When you got served with something, you're told you have to go to court. Now, anger is the fight or flight response. So when you're scared, then anger is pretty much the way that your body reacts to it. But the best thing that you can do is take a step back, try to be empathetic, and if you do that, then your experience in court will probably be a lot easier and a lot less expensive than if you did not make that effort.
Right. I mean, I wish that they had, there was a magic pill that would take all that anxiety away from people that are going through this incredibly stressful time in their life. Because I think that stress probably causes them to, I don't know, maybe they could act more appropriately or handle things a little better, and then things could be a little smoother for themselves and their kids.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you look at the bulldogs that people like to look at, those attorneys will actually try to create that fear and that resentment, that anger in the opposing party to try to get them to act stupid. When I have clients that are going up against that, what I tell them is part of the job of that attorney is to provoke you to do things that are not in your best interest. So if you can fight that instinct, then that's also good for your interests when it comes to the court proceeding.
Yeah. So you're saying there that they call attorneys that kind of instigate um, fear and saying silly things outright in court. Those are called bulldogs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the way that at least I have my clients calling them. When my clients are on the witness stand, they're being cross-examined, and the attorney is clearly trying to use a strategy of trying to provoke my client to look crazy in court, then my clients will call those attorneys bulldogs. And in fact, I do know for a fact that there are attorneys that tell their clients to try to instigate the other party to try to act stupid. For example, in text messages, to try to kind of push my clients' buttons to say something, and then this way they'll tell their clients to print up the text messages, bring them to court, and say, "Look, this is why my client should. Well, this is why Joe's client should not be trusted to be the custodial parent, because look at the way that Joe's client is talking in text messages." People do that. So I tell my clients, just realize this is strategy. Don't buy into it, because the way to win is to be as calm as possible in the face of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only questioning the bulldog thing because I just had not heard that before. I love how you put a label on it and tell people that it's just a strategy so that they know that no matter how angry that it might make them, I mean, this guy is basically poking a hornet's nest inside of you, and
Right.
you have to keep the hornets inside. Otherwise, it's just going to make you look bad.
Absolutely.
And you may not get the outcome that you're looking for.
Correct. That's the bottom line. If you buy into the other side strategy, you're not going to get the outcome that you want.
Do you ever, like, I don't know if you do this, but do you rehearse with your clients before they go in?
Absolutely. If they're going to be testifying, I bring them to my office and I go over them what they can expect.
And so you know, act like a bulldog and you see if they can hold it in.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, what I do is that I ask them the questions that I expect the other side will ask them. That this way, if they have an answer that's not really in their best interest, I mean, I'm not going to tell them to lie, absolutely not. But I'll try to examine with them what they mean, and I'll try to work on what is the best way to actually convey what it is they mean.
Absolutely. Yeah, like certain words that you can say that are gonna really push the buttons. Like if you say it's your kid instead of our kid.
Right.
I'm sure there's
That's a big one.
yeah, I'm sure there's a whole list of words that you shouldn't say.
The general rule is that you want the judge to be able to put him or herself in your place, know how you felt during the period that you described. So, for example, if you go in there and say, well, he got really angry, then that's probably not the way that you want to say it, because the judge is going to have no idea why it is that you felt that the other person was angry. So instead, if you could say, well, he came in and he slammed the door behind him and he started screaming, then the judge is more likely to understand why you felt the way that you felt.
Yeah, I mean, probably the best thing to do is to uh, how they say it is tell a good story is using the five senses. So what did you hear, smell, say, do? I know those aren't all of them, but you know, like how did you when you're touching, and you know, and then the emotion of the moment as well. But I think that that's a really great way that you could show the difference between just saying someone is angry and describing exactly what happened using those adjectives.
And I can bring you in to prep my clients because I think that you'd be good at it.
Me?
Yes.
That's true. I mean, I'm telling people how to be in front of video and how to tell a story effectively. So it's very similar. I probably wouldn't be as good at teaching them how to be as calm as you are. Uh, in these,
Then we should just tag team.
that's right. I'll be like, you take this one. That would have made me mad too. That's perfect. Well, is there anything else that we missed when talking about this? I know I love how we take these little segments and then we kind of delve into some of the stories and that sort of thing. But I love how we can split this up into small little subjects that are easy for everyone to swallow. So oftentimes we don't miss anything. But if there's any stories or any examples you want to share before we go, just let me know.
Well, I can tell you, there's one guy that I think about, and his case was a perfect example of how a client can react to a situation well, and he can have a good outcome. This is a guy who he had actually done a stipulation, an agreement with his soon-to-be ex-wife about when he was going to see his kids, how much he was going to pay, all of that. They had it written up and everything, and then she changed her mind and decided that she didn't want to do that. And she took him to family court for custody and child support. And this guy had every reason to be angry. His ex-wife had no reason to do what she did. But I gave him the suggestions that I just talked about in this video. And I honestly think he probably would have done exactly what I told him to do, even without my advice, because he was a very good-natured guy. But he didn't react. He didn't buy into it. He still actually went over to his ex-wife's house, didn't start fights, helped the kids with their homework, and all it took was a couple of appearances, and she agreed to go along with exactly what they'd agreed upon already. And it was a very easy case. He might not have thought so. I'm sure that it was still very difficult for him, but at the same time, there really wasn't much to do, and he saved himself a lot of time and money. But in a parallel universe, he could have said, well, you know what, then I want to go for sole custody, then I want to pay a lot less. And I wouldn't have blamed him for reacting that way, because what she did was wrong. But at the same time, his case would have been a lot longer and a lot more expensive than it was when he did what he did and didn't react in a way that a lot of people probably would have.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. I guess that saying, "Or you get more with honey than you do vinegar," really does work. And I'm sure that everybody that works at the court appreciates it when people don't come in with a really bad attitude toward their ex.
Right.
It just makes the whole process easier on everyone. Well, that's a really great example. And I think another thing that people can do if someone's trying to egg them on a text is just don't say anything, or the shorter the answer, the better, right? Don't put any emotion in it.
Yeah, and I tell people, always pretend the judge is CC'd on your text messages, because for all intents and purposes, the judge is.
Yeah. You're making me think I got to go back through some texts now.
Well, it's an unfortunate thing. One of my clients said to me that it's really difficult when every single time that she's texting with her soon-to-be ex-husband, she has to think, well, how can this be used against me? But it's a reality, because whenever people react angrily in texts, then without a doubt, they're going to send those text messages to their attorney, and the attorney's going to walk into court with them and say, hey, look, this is why the other side shouldn't have custody.
Yeah, and it is too bad, because you can't have real conversations with people, and you can't express emotions. It probably would be better if they went to therapy for that. But yeah, it's definitely a tough situation. So I'm sure people are glad when it's all over. Although
Yes.
Those situations keep going, because they can keep bringing you back to court later on, right?
It depends. It feels like it's more common than it actually is, because those are the cases that take up the most time. But in the majority of cases, they don't come back like that. They say that 20% of our cases take up 80% of our time. But yes, the most hotly contested cases do come back for modifications, enforcement.
Well, it sounds like a never-ending headache. But we are
Yes.
so glad to have someone like you out there helping out and helping people get through these tough situations. So if you or anyone you know needs a fantastic family attorney in the New York City area, I know that Attorney Joseph Nivin is taking cases, and I know that you're very busy though. So I feel free to give him a call at any time. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. I know that we're going to be talking about something interesting on Friday. We're going to be talking about um, what if you want to be a foster parent to a relative's child. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, that sounds like a very interesting topic, and I'm sure that there's a lot of interesting stories to go with that. All right. Well, then we'll look forward to seeing you at 3:30 on Friday, East Coast time. And thank you again for talking to us today about those suspicions and how they can ruin your case. And hopefully everyone has learned to just stay calm, cool, and collective and get through the darn divorce.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we will look forward to talking to you in a few days. You have an awesome day.
You too. See you Friday.
See you Friday. Thanks again.